Okay.
Hi guys.
Hi, David.
Hi, how are you? You guys are on
Hi,
time.
thank you.
Well done, well done. Let's give the guys a few minutes. How is everyone doing?
We are doing good, David, from Sunday.
Hi, Martha.
Hi.
Okay.
Yeah.
You managed to get all your medals, luckily, yeah?
Yes. The boys were happy.
Okay.
Yeah. They earned them.
Yeah, no, that was good.
Yeah, and we want something like that one there. Always earned
Yes,
something.
always done. Yeah. You know, sometimes guys want to borrow your t-shirt, want to borrow this and that, and we always insist this one you don't do. You have to earn it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Hi, Hitesh.
Yeah. Sorry?
Hitesh. I'm saying hello to Hitesh.
Oh, I was muted. Good evening, David.
Hi, yeah, evening. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, David. How are you doing?
Oh, very well, very well. I'm just going to test my share, my nini.
Yeah,
So
it is
that
visible.
it's visible, yeah. Normally, these things.
The only thing you have to do the full screen, I believe.
Yes. I'll do the full one. I just wanted to.
Dedan, good evening.
Good evening to you.
How
Hey,
have you
Good
been,
evening,
Bana?
Josh. Fine, thank you.
Yeah, Dedan, karibu sana.
Asante
Good to have
sana.
you.
Yes.
Waiting for guys a bit. I'll just test that. Let me make sure that still remember how to maximize.
At the bottom left, huh?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yep, there you go.
Okay. Good. Yeah, who else in the house is in the house? You can say hello.
Actually, you went. Recording.
Are you coming to do Nairobi?
No, I am in India nowadays.
Oh, I left you in Uganda.
I was in Uganda for some time. I am here in India and I would be back only by November, it seems.
Okay. Oh, fantastic. All right. Oh, that's good.
So nowadays you people see my workout at 5 a.m. Nairobi time.
Yeah, the time change. I remember you even commented on one of those days that India time. So I just thought you were traveling then.
Yeah, I'm here for some time now.
Okay. Are you working there?
I am working remotely from here.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. I think we need to start. because of
I can see somebody as Eliud Kipchoge also here.
somebody.
As Eliud Kipchoge here.
Well, we might start sending him money, Bwana, to sign our autographs. That's a good idea. Eliud is in the house, please. If you want
Yeah.
a
We
private
want to
class,
see his
send
face.
1,000 Kenya shillings to this number. Yeah. Okay, I think let's get started. We have enough people to get going, and then the rest can join us. I want to take this opportunity to thank all of us for making time. I think for me, there's I always feel that there is so much to learn, and the more we share, the more we improve. And I'm quite passionate about ensuring that we all grow together, not just a few of us. And I believe that I believe that all of us always have something that we are working towards. We may not be necessarily working towards the exact same goals, but all of us get challenge ourselves to get better, and these kinds of forums are one of the ways that we can improve on our abilities. I came up with Fitness with David some years back after hitting a lot of landmines, and I told myself, look, I've learned the hard way. I really want to be able to share, number one, to share from experience, so that those landmines don't necessarily hit others. And importantly, to be able to help others and at whatever level, whether you are running a 10, a 15, whether you're doing sub 3 or sub 5, we all know that whatever sub or whatever next goal we are working on is always requires some work, and encouragement along the way always helps. And importantly, to have the technical information. I'll request us to mute.
Amerudi shule ama alitransfer?
Hao watu walitransfer shule wa mute. Kwanza watu watakuja. So and also to work with others so that we can, because there is no one man is an island of information. So today I'm also going to have Dedan with us. Dedan, most of us know him. He's been very instrumental in training a number of people, and unlike we never had. Hello. Yes, Mike. Yeah. So I'll just say that I'm also excited to have Dedan. I believe we share the same vision with him and with others. Dedan has been doing a fantastic job training guys. We now have quite a number of people being trained in a structured way, learning the right way. We used to hear stories of people who would run a full marathon the weekend before Stanchart, then they would seize up on Stanchart. But now we know better, and that is why we are consistently improving. So Dedan is here with us, recreational runner. He's also an American Council of Exercise certified personal trainer. So those of us who are training with him, we know we are in very safe hands. We are not going to work. He understands what he's talking about. He's very passionate about running. You know, I tell guys it's one thing to coach, it's another to be also part of that. You know, and we know coaches don't necessarily have to be runners as such, or as good runners or as good footballers. There's an understanding that they must have of the sport, but it really helps if you are able to see them also doing what they preach. Of course, with time we'll age and we may not be able to run with everyone, etc. But it's a good thing to be able to run with the likes of Miricho. He's currently training a number of people. I like his program for Back to Basics, because I believe that when we get the basics right, then everything else falls in place. And he's got marathon PB of 3:11. 32, which I'm sure he'll break very soon. He's always breaking his PBs. Half marathon PB, 1:26:53, 10K 38, and 5K 18.50. And we'll give him an opportunity to take part in the discussion. But then you can say hello to the guys.
Good evening, and thank you very much for joining into this discussion. I always say that there are two things that can go wrong during your race. Yeah, no matter how well prepared you are, if these two things you don't have them, then there's a very high likelihood that your race will not go as well as it's supposed to be. And these two things are fueling and pacing. If you don't have these two things when you're going into a race, your race can there's a very high guarantee that your race will not go as planned. So no matter how well you're prepared, no matter how long you've done your training, if you go into the race without a proper fueling plan and a proper pacing plan, the likelihood of you not meeting your target is very high. So I'm very happy that we are talking about fueling today. Some of us have learned the hard way. Yeah, we've for the longest time we've done marathons only with water, but as we've done many marathons, as we have experienced those marathons, as we have studied and learned how to fuel and hydrate, it's now easier, and we are trying to pass this information to as many people as possible. You should not suffer in a race when you know there's a solution to it. So I'm very happy to be here and to share tips on how to fuel for your race. Thank you. David, go ahead.
Yes. Okay, sorry. I need to mute everyone, and I've actually forgotten where that button is. I think. When it's on which one? I need to mute. Sorry.
Go to the participants, and then you can see who is not muted, and then you can mute them from there.
Okay, yeah. I'm getting technical help. I don't know.
David, it is one Angela. And yeah, Angela, I can see. Keshi.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Good to go.
I've gotten help from my wife. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. So let me share the screen, then we can proceed. So I'll go straight into nutrition, and as Dedan says, when nutrition and hydration goes wrong, nothing else matters. So we talked a bit about ourselves. So that's me. We had an intro on Miricho. So I'll start off with general nutrition. I think we all know that nutrition is paramount. As we talk about the nutrition for running, it is also very important that we also understand the general day-to-day nutrition. So nutrition is essential to promote good health and promote optimal performance. Without that, then we don't have the building blocks that will eventually help us with the other nutrition and hydration for the race. The calories required to sustain metabolism for men is 2,500 calories. For women is 2,000 calories. People ask why. The explanation given is that the men have more muscle mass than women, and muscles require a bit more fuel. So that is the reason. It is not bias. So we get the balanced diet, we all know, comes from carbohydrates. It constitutes of carbohydrates, protein, fats, vitamin, and minerals. Our key source of nutrition for runners, should be from carbohydrates. It should come from 60% complex carbohydrates. And when we say complex, it's those carbohydrates that sit a bit longer in the stomach. They don't just get immediately, they don't give you a sugar high and then drop you. We know potatoes, so there's the likes of potatoes, sweet potatoes as well, brown bread, there are cereals, etc. The 20% comes from of our general nutrition should come from our proteins. And then of course, you're supposed to eat the fresh fruits and vegetables. When we talk about fueling, because there's always a question about that, it's guided by how far and long, and mostly it's time. Because remember, we all run at different paces. So my 2 hours might not be Kipchoge's 2 hours. So when you're looking at that, we'll be saying, if I'm running 2 hours, I'll require something in my tank. And normally the body of a human being will constitute enough fuel to be able to last between 90 minutes and 2 hours, depending on on someone's efficiency. So any runs from 75, depending on the individuals, upwards can require a bit of nutrition, a nutrition boost to keep going. So that is general nutrition. When we talk about hydration, why is it very important? Hydration is important because remember, a very big constituent of your blood is actually water. So when you sweat, your blood gets compromised by putting out a lot of water, and that means the water that is supposed to carry the blood is the one that is supposed to carry oxygen. It gets compromised. The other very important thing about hydration is that it's used to transfer heat. So just like a car requires a coolant, the hydration, the water in your body, the sweat, is supposed to transfer heat. It is also important because it actually helps dissipate fatigue, because the more, if you get dehydrated, you're not taking away you're not washing away the waste products, efficiently, and therefore you keep losing. You then don't get the necessary nutrients, the necessary waste away, and the required nutrients back to your muscles. You also cramp, because again, remember, the same blood is actually the one that is carrying your sodium, etc. So when that runs down, you're also losing the sodium. So if you are replenishing some more and you don't have enough hydration in you, you're actually not getting the required sodium into your muscles, and they require that. And of course, waste product removal, which we have talked about. What do we drink? That is a question that normally people will ask. You can take water, juice, sports/isotonic drinks, tea, or even coffee. And tea, again, I've repeated that. For those who are joining us, you can put the Karibu Sana. And for all of us, we can put some questions on the chat. After this presentation, we'll be having Dedan taking in a Q&A, I'll assist him as well, so that we can be able to hear your questions as well. When to drink? You're supposed to drink pre-race. a race day and in the race. So normally how I look at hydration, every time I finish a race, one of the things that I do is to make sure that I'm preparing myself for the next run. So how do I do that? I make sure I stretch to return my muscles back to normal working condition. I also hydrate within reasonable time, and we shall look at that. I also ensure that I'm also replenishing my lost glycogen. So it's a very critical factor in ensuring that your muscles recover. One of the things that keeps the fatigue lingering is the fact that when you do not replenish the lost glycogen, actually the muscles don't get the food that they require for recovery. So fueling for runs, important to note, our body has limited amount of calories stored in our blood. We are a limited amount of calories which is stored in our blood, liver, and muscles in form of glycogen. You know, like a car, if regardless of how much money you have in your pocket, if your car has capacity of 50 liters, you can only take 50 liters. So somewhere, if you're driving, say, from here to Mombasa, maybe Mtito one day you need to refuel, and you may have to refuel somewhere else. That is the same thing with our bodies. And that is why we then move on to having a requirement for additional hydration and nutrition to supplement what is stored in our body. So normally, when we are looking at a race, you want to start with a full tank as much as possible. And then you want to make sure that as you start using that full tank, you are also replenishing, because this is not instant energy that will come to your body. So the reason why we want to start fueling and hydrating early is for a number of reasons. One of them is because you do not want to wait until your energy runs out, because when you take whatever it is that you will be taking, say the gel, they will not, it's not direct injection. And committed, but there are still some others coming in. So as you yeah, okay. So so you want to start taking. So I said 2 reasons why you want to start nutrition early. Sorry, I went to the next slide. Why you want to start nutrition early is because, 1, you do not want to run out of energy. Number 2, and very, very, very important, is because okay, I'll go back to that one for replenishing energy. By the time you feel you need the energy, it is not an IV that will be directly injected into your bloodstream. So there is a process, even if it's a gel, that needs to be that the body has to undergo to actually deliver this energy that the gel gives from the stomach to your bloodstream. So you want to be consistently taking so that you do not run out of energy. The other key and very important thing is because as you continue running, as you run, the body shunts away blood from the non-essential functions to the parts of the body that really require that blood. And in this case, when we are running, it's our feet and most of the moving parts. So digestion is sort of shunned a bit, and so blood is taken away from there. When blood is taken away from your digestion, it becomes difficult to digest. So if you take too long to start digesting, to start taking your gels, by the time you start, say 2 hours down the line, or 1.5 or 3 or 2.5 hours down the line, the body has actually sort of gotten rid of its, has nothing in the tummy that it has been working with. So it has actually taken most of the blood away. And now it becomes a very strange thing, because you have the blood, you have the gel in your stomach or whatever it is that you're using, but even the little blood that would have been left in there for a little digestion has been taken away. So you want to make sure that you do not totally make the body stop its digestion function totally by starting to eat early. And we'll see how you do that. So runs over 90 minutes, we talked about that. Runs over 90 minutes or thereabouts will require a bit of hydration and nutrition addition, because like we said, the body is likely to run out of fuel by then. How do you fuel? You use sports drinks. And sports drinks are flavored beverages which contain electrolytes, low levels of sodium, and importantly, carbohydrates, and sometimes some have vitamins. But the key elements are electrolytes, sodium, and carbohydrates. So carbohydrates is the key one because that is energy. Sodium, why? Because as you sweat, you're losing sodium, and sodium is a very key component of your muscle functioning. And when you lose too much of sodium, then you are going to cramp. That could lead to cramps depending on the intensity. And when you look at most of the gels, and we have the gels here, most will have some sodium in them. And depending on your sweat rate, and sweat rate, what we do for you to figure out how much you sweat, I mean, how much you may require, you can weigh yourself between before a long run and after a long run and see how much fluid you lose. Basically, over time, you can be able to sort of approximate how much. But even if you're not able to do that, even the way the body functions might be able to tell you, because if you keep cramping, you may require gels with higher sodium content, or you may require even additional, like these are chews that have sodium with them. So you may require a bit more supplementation of the sodium. So what's the difference between with energy drinks? And we had this conversation with the Dedan. Again, you know, a while ago or sometimes ago, or even now, some guys will take Red Bull as part of an energy, for their running. A reminder, it's not an isotonic drink. It is an energy drink, and its purpose is to give you a boost of energy, but it gives you a very high boost and then drops you very quickly. And then it doesn't have all the other things that you require for the run. So it may give you a boost, but it will only serve you for a short time, and then you'll be back to the to the challenges that you are going through. And again, we can expound on that in the Q&A as well. Sports gels for runs longer than 90 minutes. We have talked about depleting calories. Timing of the gel consumption during the run is very important. We've talked about that. One very key thing, it's important to practice. They say that it takes about 5 to 10 weeks, depending on the individuals, for your gut to get used to training. The gut is a trainable organ, just like your limbs, your legs, your hands, etc. And depending on the individuals, some people are lucky, they'll start a gel today and they'll run with it. Some people need to, I know one of the biggest challenge with most people is that when you are told about gels and you try, then you have gastro issues. So there's some reasons why this happens, and we will look at that. It's either the gel doesn't work well with you, or you're taking too much, or you're starting too soon, and everyone's body is unique. So you may need to introduce the gels over time, pole. So you take maybe half in a long run if you're just starting. Sometimes I tell people, if you want to experiment with a new gel, you can even try on an easy run to just see, is it palatable to you? Then, of course, you then carry it on in a long run. But very, very importantly, is to try it at the intensity at which you will be running, because it can work well at low intensity, and at very high speeds, when the body has sent all the blood to the limbs, then you may have issues. So you really want to try in the long runs, and also to try on the fast runs, like maybe marathon intensity in a short distance. You can choose to run your marathon pace for a shorter time and try a gel. Wash them down with water to assist in their digestion. Don't take a gel and then it goes and sits in your stomach like tarmac, or cement. So you really want to take them. I normally try to time mine around a water point if I'm in a race, or if I'm being supported, then wherever the support point is. So it's very important, because adding a bit of water to that just helps in quick digestion. You can have snacks on the go, depends on the length of the run. I think in ultras, just the other day, I had to train myself to take solids. So again, energy bars, fruits, and jelly babies. Post-run snacks, and we'll talk a bit in length about this again. High carbohydrate snack within half an hour. We'll expound on that a bit more. Then the reason why is because the maximal uptake of glucose in the body is in those first 30 minutes after your run. So it's very, very important that right after a run, you try and take something. And because the body is not normally able to feed for most people, one of the things that works well is a drink, a drink that will have carbohydrates and mostly protein, a protein shake. And as we go along, we'll see the need for protein. The protein shakes will have a certain amount of carbohydrates and a certain amount of protein. The carbohydrates goes to replenish the lost glycogen, while the protein is very important in stopping muscle degeneration after, they call it muscle resynthesis. It helps in muscle resynthesis, because as the body, if it takes a very long time for you to take a protein, then sometimes the muscles get wasted. But when you take the protein, instead of the body synthesizing the protein in your muscles, it then uses whatever you have taken, and that helps not destroy your muscles after your runs. And we can expound a bit more. Liquid food supplements for those runners who don't like to eat right after exercise. That is what we've been talking about. Chocolate milk is a very key one. They are normally, drinks that have chocolate in, that we call chocolate milk. So they'll have the protein and they'll have the carbohydrates. So those are very good. And then we have the normal shakes, that protein shakes that you can buy, or the fruit smoothies, and you can add a few things and you can experiment with them. So the food supplements will contain carbohydrates, protein, vitamins, and electrolytes. Fueling, you want to start your run with a full tank as much as practical. Then one of the key fundamentals of fueling is that you want to have carbohydrate-rich food, 5 to 7 kilograms per day. I think there's an error there somewhere. I think I need to cross-check that. But anyway, basically you need to have carbohydrates. If you are fueling carbohydrate-rich food, the good sources are pasta, rice, potato, and bread. There is a discussion that we normally have about carbo loading. And basically what my personal experience over time is that when I drop my high intensity training, then I don't necessarily need to carbo load. And I mean, basically people have different experiences. But for me, once I drop the intensity of training, I maintain the same food, or I reduce my protein and add my carbohydrates. So same amount of food, but a bit biased to the carbohydrate. I don't need to like eat a very big plate of ugali, etc. People are different. You need to experiment with all these things in a run, because your weight can shift quite significantly. So remember, when you again add carbohydrates, you really want to add it and reduce something else. So if I was taking a bowl this big and it had protein, vegetables, and carbohydrates, I may want to keep that plate, or maybe a little bit bigger, or add a bit more to that plate. But instead of making everything the same, I could bias it with carbohydrates and reduce the protein or the vegetables. And we'll also see later on that you also, towards the race, want to reduce your veggies and the high fiber foods, because one, they are difficult to digest, and they sit in the stomach for long, and they also they sit for long. They also help in your bowel movement, so you don't want to be wanting to go to the toilet in the race. So towards the race, one, for digestion, because if you eat it too close to the race, it won't be digested. It will give you gastro issues. And then because they also, once the process of digestion is done, they want to get out. You don't want to keep having pit stops. So glycogen concentration in the muscle is dependent on diet. So glycogen you require mostly for the high intensity exercise, and higher glycogen concentration in the muscles. The higher the glycogen concentration in the muscle, the less fatigue and the better the performance. We start getting fatigued when the muscles lose the total carbohydrates and there is no replenishing, because remember, carbohydrates in the form of glycogen is what fuels your performance. So if that you don't have that glycogen in your system, then you have no fuel. It's just like a car without fuel, and eventually you will stall. And for high intensity training, you normally need the fuel source is from glycogen. For lower intensity training, you're able to tap into fat. The glycogen resources are limited, so when you're moving very fast, they are quickly depleted. In fact, in some very high intensity training, it can just take you about 45 minutes to 1 hour to totally deplete. And so when you move very fast, within an hour, you could actually hit the wall. If you hit your very highest max speed, between 45, for some people even less, to 1 hour, you then deplete totally your energy. During the run race, the best research has shown that the average body can consume between 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrates per hour comfortably. So you need to also find out, and this is through experiment, Hakuna lab. We don't have labs. You could get that thing that is probably making the one that people are saying Kipchoge was carrying coins to pay that man on a bike. So generally 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrates per hour. Anything above that, for most people, will give you GI issues, gastric intestinal issues. So, and you see that most gels will provide that within an hour. And you can also have a good combination. So you can have the gels, you can have water, sports gels, chews, bars, and regular foods, a combination of that. Of course, you don't want to take all of them. So you choose. For example, I take a sports drink and I take gels. You know, in the ultras, I was taking sports drinks. I was taking in Comrades sports drinks, and I took time to train. Sports drinks, which is Mortein. I use Mortein. Gels, I use Guroctane. The coffee brew with the very high sodium, because I sweat a lot, very high sodium content, and it also has the caffeine, and we see the effects of caffeine. And then I would take Mortein. Recently introduced a Mortein bar. So, but I would space them 45 minutes apart. Of course, when we go for the runs, we also want to study what is on the course. Some courses will allow you to bring in your own drink. Some, like Tokyo, you don't go in with your own drink. So there's two things, you know, you either, I mean, like when we were doing Tokyo, when you're preparing for Tokyo the first time before COVID, we try to get some of those drinks so that you find out whether it works. But some, like Berlin, for example, we were able to place our drinks. You can bring in your drink, and there are also companies, including in Comrades, that you can actually give your bottle to. They'll tell you we'll be at point number kilometer 15, kilometer say 30, and maybe whatever other kilometer, and you take your bottle either the first thing in the morning of the race or or the day before race, and they position your bottle in those places. So you just need to come, run, and you find your table, just like the elite. The only one thing I found with that is sometimes you can find 200 bottles and 10 that look the same. So I found it a bit challenging, you know, and eventually I started putting a long flag, but even then it becomes a bit of a mess to find them in 200 bottles. So that can become something, but at least you will get what you want in the course. So the sports drink you see there, to get 30 to 35, you need about 500 ml. You may not be able to take 500 ml in a 1 hour. So you may want to now mix the sports drink and a gel, for example. High carb drinks, some people can take up to 90. I think I'm able to take up to a bit over 60. And then they'll give you, then you can combine, you can take the different combinations. The gels, again, 1 to 1.5 gels will give you about 30 grams. Chews, you need 4 to 6 chews for those guys who use chews. So you're constantly chewing to get that amount of energy. Banana, you need 1 to 1.5 bananas. I'm not too sure how many guys will be able to take even a full banana within an hour. So you take a piece and then maybe supplement it with something else. Again, depending on the intensity of your run. The faster you run, the more you are burning, and the more you may need to stay close to the numbers that are there. Then there's energy bars. Hydration, again, some additional points. You want to start the race hydrated. You don't want to start dehydrated. And you want to maintain proper hydration throughout the race. We say you do not start drinking when you feel like you're thirsty. You actually drink throughout. And when I say throughout, I mean you start in the course of the run. you will have established in training, and this is very important. Remember, in training, you can tweak things. So today, if I take water every 5 kilometers and I find it was too much for me, I may choose to take every, say 10, but 10 might be too long. Or I might decide if I was taking a certain amount at 5, I half it so that I don't have a challenge. So it is very, very important that we train in the race, we do that in training, so that by the time we get to the race, we know exactly how we need to do things, okay? So your training does not only constitute training to run well, to run long, to run hills, to do intervals. Even in those trainings, you must incorporate your hydration and your nutrition. Remember, we said if your hydration and nutrition fails, nothing else matters. So you want to be monitoring your urine, and every day you run, over the course of the day, you should be monitoring your urine. You can see the differences there. Of course, the clearer, the better. Before the race, you want to take in some drink. Personally, when I wake up, I take a coffee and a very small piece of bread and peanut butter, very small. Then as I go to the course, and this is dependent on a number of things. If my run is an hour away from home, then I'll be sipping a bit of isotonic on the way if I'm doing any runs over 30 kilometers. Of course, in some of the races, we have had to get to the start line 4 hours before. You also have to factor that. For example, the World Marathon Majors, Boston, New York, you are taken to the start line 3 hours before and you stay in that cold. So you've also got to factor that in those 3 hours, you have to ensure that your nutrition is not running behind. For the guys who are going to run international races, please acquaint yourself with by what time you should be at the start line. The reason they take you that far is because the roads close that early. The roads close because remember, some of these races, for example, New York has 50,000 runners running the 42K. So there's going to be a time when some roads you cannot access. So you need to be there early and then you hang around. Luckily, they have a lot of food on the course, but it may not be food. I mean, at the start line, I think like New York has a lot of Dunkin' Donuts. You can actually, if you get carried away and eat too many donuts and not be able to run. But you have to have, basically, this has to be something you have in your head. It cannot be a coincidence that you discover that they will take you 3 hours before the race to the start line. You have to have you have to have researched. Very important, allow me to mention this away from hydration and nutrition. You must also know when your corral closes. The corral is your start line, the area where you're going to start from. Jack and I got locked out of New York Marathon corral. We were just warming around there and we thought they were closing the corral at a certain time, but we were 5 minutes behind and they could not open it for us. So imagine we had warmed up, we cooled down, we had to cool down, and because we were worried now they would close for us, because New York start has 4 starts. So we started the second lot, which was 30 minutes or thereabouts or 15 from our initial start. So very important, it's important that I mentioned that. So acquaint yourself with the requirements of your race, very important. During the race, you should not lose more than 3% of body weight, consuming fluid at a rate that is below your sweat rate. So you should basically over time, and we're not going to necessarily measure our sweat rate, but over time, you should have practiced this and you know how much to take. For example, and also very important is to know the distribution of the water points. Some people will put them 3 kilometers away. For example, Comrades has the water points 3 kilometers apart. The other races may have them at 5 or thereabouts. So you need to be able to know what is the gap between the water points. Some new guys I need to mute again. Yeah, so very, very important, something that we may take for granted or we may not be aware of. Feeding before meals, you know, what happens with the body when we sleep, the nervous system actually consumes in our sleep a lot of, as much as 40% of our glycogen levels. And when I discovered that, that was very telling, that you can actually sleep and you have not ran and you know you are depleted. So one of the things we do in the race is, because you want to start the race with your full tank, with your tank full, we train our body to take a meal some hours before. Some people are able to do it, some people are not, and you need to discover which people you are. So this graph basically says, if you're going to be running, if you're going to eat your meal 4 hours before the race, or if you're able to eat 4 hours before the race, you need about 4 grams per kilogram of food. So for example, if I'm 60, 61, 62, then I'll need about 240 grams of food. What would that constitute 4 hours before? It would be something like toast, bagels, porridge, cereal, rice, scotch, pancakes, cereal bars, etc., bananas, because I have enough time to digest it. Remember, this is showing us how far we are. It's actually a component of how far we are from starting. If we are going to eat 3 hours to the race, then we want to be taking low fat in the last, ensure that your food has very limited fat, because fat again takes a long time to digest. So you may want to limit anything that may have that. I guess even things like peanut butter, because they have some constituent of fat, you may want to watch how much you take. 2 hours, if you're going to take 2 hours to the race, then again, watch out what you take and the amount. You see, there's the amount and what you eat. 1 hour to race, of course, low fiber. And I would say for all of us, try and avoid the food with fiber the last 3 hours, so that at least that food is not giving you, sitting in the stomach without getting digested when you are running and making you cramp. Remember, carbohydrates take 3 hours to digest. Proteins takes about 6 hours to fully digest. The reason why we are not taking heavy protein is because if you are going to eat even 3 hours before, 3 hours into the race, your protein will still be digesting. So 2 things will happen. First, you will have GI issues because you'll be trying to digest. 2, they are not giving you the energy you require, because the whole essence of carbo loading is to be able to get energy to your bloodstream. That food sitting in the stomach is no good. It needs to get into your blood. Practice is key, both for content and timing. During key training sessions of similar intensity and length, make sure that you do the training in key training sessions of similar intensity. We say intensity is very key, length, and in small races. So race day breakfast examples, you can see all that: toast, porridge with peanut butter, fruit-based smoothies, cereal bars, bowl, all those. You just need to figure out what works for you. Juices, and we will see that. Some people, remember, they've got fructose, and that can lead to acidity for many people. So you really want to be careful about what you take. And the best way so that you're not taking chances is to take them during training. Remember, very key, don't be tempted to taste something on the course, on the start line that you have not used before. You can have trained as much, you can be in the best shape possible, you might have avoided any form of issues, and just something you put in your mouth becomes detrimental. And remember, we are always told you have whatever you are 100% responsible for what you put in your mouth. Good. Just before start, 15 to 30 minutes, preload with some fuel. Normally, most of the gels, especially like the ones I'm accustomed to, they'll say 5 minutes to the race, take the gel. Some people might find that too close to the start. Again, train and figure out. Make sure it's 20 to 30 grams and take a bit of water. Again, remember, with the hydration, you will have to do what you have trained. Also, bear in mind, again, very important, something that we could miss out, is that the temperature conditions of the day can also dictate or can also influence a bit of change away from what you are used to. Because if you are running a race, say for example, Kili tends to get very hot, then you may need to probably take a little bit more water, because and some of us who train very early in the morning, you may never get to that level of heat, and you may not be able to train entirely to be able to figure that out. So you must be able to bear those factors into mind. And every time we go for a race, we are always looking at the race conditions. Preventing gut issues. One of the biggest challenges with this issue of hydration and nutrition is that as you try to get the best out of hydration and nutrition, you then create additional issues. So make training with carbohydrates part of your routine at least once a week. So normally I would do it in the long runs. Avoid high fat and high protein foods the day before. Again, for the reasons we have said, they are not easy to digest. Avoid milk products the day before. Milk contains lactose. Even for people who may not be lactose intolerant, remember it is also something that can actually give you a bit of a challenge. But again, if you've trained and it works, it works. Personally, I take my coffee in the morning without any milk. Avoid high fiber foods. Train your high nutrition. Avoid aspirins and non-steroidal anti-inflammation drugs. Again, they create, I mean, especially when you have pains and injuries, you know, they actually cause a strain on the kidneys. As the kidney is trying to clean out the blood, it's also getting bogged down by the chemicals in the drugs. Avoid dehydration, make sure you don't get dehydrated. Avoid high fructose foods. So nutrition considerations, a bit of a near summary. What you eat the day before or during the marathon can affect stomach problems. These are very common, so that is gastrointestinal problems. Muscle cramping can happen in the race related to nutrition. You can overheat. And remember, to a very large extent, when you overheat, you can actually collapse. Okay, very important. The other side of things is if you overhydrate, again, you can get a condition, you know, you can get actually what happens when you overhydrate, remember, because you have sweat, you have the amount of sodium in the body is reduced, even though you are adding some more. So if you overhydrate with plain water, and that is why it is advisable for us to get used to taking the isotonic drinks, because they also have sodium. When you just hydrate with water, you make a bad situation worse by actually diluting the little sodium that is left in your body. You are sweating, you have little sodium left, especially when you're not taking gels and or whatever nutrition you're using does not give you sodium. You know, some people will take just a banana. Remember, the amount of sodium in a banana is, and I'm not even sure how much there is. There's potassium, but I'm not sure sodium. So if you take that and you're not taking an isotonic and you're not leaking salt, in the ultras we leak salt, then you take a lot of water, you're actually reducing, diluting the little sodium left. And this can lead to very severe cramping. Overhydration, again, that is what we are talking about. You get a condition called hyponatremia, which can become life-threatening. By the way, that is a very serious issue. When you've lost all the sodium and you have now overhydrated, it can actually become detrimental to your what they are calling life-threatening. Because remember, the muscles require sodium. The heart is a muscle. It also requires sodium for its functioning. Very, very important, the electrolyte. And also, of course, the dehydration will affect performance, because dehydration is taking away a part of the blood constituents. You're not getting the oxygen to the bodies. You're not getting the nutrients to your muscles. You're not getting the oxygen to your muscles. Common race day mistakes that we make with not having a plan, that is very serious. That is a serious one. We shall not expound too much. You must have a plan. It had better be a bad plan. It is even better if it's a bad plan on a light note. Sticking to a plan at all costs. This is also the other side of things. I mean, you can be in a race, you are feeling nauseated, and because your race plan had said that at 5K you must take a gel, you take a gel. You don't have to. You can also, I mean, if there's something else that is not going right, it could be for any reason, you can always manage. That's why we are human beings. You can change the plan. Sometimes in the race, especially when you take gels for long, there's a time that you actually feel you don't want to take. So when for me that happens, I'll either change. Normally in the ultras, that's why we are mixing with the solids, because when you take gels too much, it feels they give you nausea. But when you add a solid like a banana, a piece of bread, brown bread, or whatever bread, but brown bread is best, a gel, an energy bar, then you are swapping what you are eating and the body is getting a different taste. But even then with that, you can still get nauseated. So you must have a plan. This is like when I did my 60K, the last 60K when I was doing comrades training, that was my nutrition plan. I had in the morning, I had 1 brown bread slice with butter and coffee, Mortin caffeinated. On the way to the, I did this in Gong. I was sipping Mortin caffeinated isotonic on the way. At the start line, 5 minutes to start, as I finished my warm up and stretched, I took Roctane, Mortin drink every 6 kilometers. And I was doing it every 6 kilometers because comrades have a hydration point every 3 kilometers. So I knew at 3, if I want, I can sip water, but I want to take my Mortin at 6. Go Roctane gel at 45 minutes, and all my entire nutrition plan was every 45 minutes up to 410, and then I finished at 428. Experiment, if something doesn't work, experiment. That is why you need to do it early in training so that you can change and find what is right and tweak it. Don't try anything new on race day, individualize. The fact that someone is taking this drink, that gel, you do not have to copy, or it doesn't have, I mean, okay, you can try it, but if it doesn't work for you, you don't need to keep using what others are using. For me, I find that I'm never able to take the Mortin gels, but the drink mix works very well with me. So I use the drink mix and the goop. After your run, refuel. There are 2 things. When you finish your run, there are a number of 3 very key components that you need to take care of. You need to take care of refueling, rehydration, and rebuilding. So refuel, carbohydrate-rich foods will help you replace your glycogen stores for your next training session, which is the following day, and you need to start that process early. The reason why the drinks become better, the shakes, is because sometimes, especially after the long runs, you're not able to eat, but you can be able to drink within a certain time. The window we have seen, the best window when the muscles are like a sponge, is within 30 minutes. And that is a window you must exploit. For me, I take my drink with me in the car, or into the race. When my finish pack, what I normally do, if it's a shake that is in powder form, I put the powder in a bottle, and then I look for water because there's always water at the finish line. And then I add the water, shake it, and take. If and I always have that. I mean, it's part of my preparation for any race or any training. Rehydrate, replace sweat loss to ensure that now you are putting back your blood back to normal for the next session. You could do a number of things. Water is very good. Of course, then you may want some juice if you want, but then you don't want to take very sugary things because they raise you. The sugars will raise you up and drop you very quickly. Rebuild, repairing muscles. We have talked a lot about this. Having the protein in the drink. They say that 20 grams of protein within 30 minutes is good, and mostly the milk, the chocolate milk has that. Those guys who like protein milk can clap. Good, and that marks the end of our presentation. As I welcome Richo also to take us through the next session of Q&A. I just want to remind us here, just before we exit, on Saturday we have a big run at 2:15 Karen, a BMW, a Berlin Marathon, and Comrades Marathon, a homecoming party, a run and a farewell and celebration of the trainings for the guys doing Stanchart, Cape Town Marathon, and we have many of them, and I can see many of them in this forum, Chicago Marathon, Frankfurt Marathon, and Amsterdam Marathon. So it's marathon season, so it's a good time to all be sharing. So Miricho Karibu, I think you can take us through Q&A, and or you can also add a few things as I can run through I mean, we can take the Q&A, and what we'll do is that people can unmute and ask the question. I will also be looking through the questions, and I'll discuss them in between. So Miricho Karibu sana, I'm glad to have you.
Thank you very much, David. It's a pleasure to be here. I think two things I want to emphasize is number one, the biggest mistakes runners make when it comes to fueling are five of them. Number one is not practicing fueling in training. you must practice fueling in training. And what works for me might not work for someone else. Of course, there are those guidelines you have to follow. When you're doing a very fast run, like a marathon, your body can take up to 60 grams of carbs every hour. That's what your body can digest, because already your body is what we call is compromised. Your muscles, your body is sending all the blood to the muscles, so your digestive system is compromised. So between 30 and 60 grams is what most people can handle. For slower runs like ultras, that one can go a bit higher. But for a marathon, most people can handle 60 grams of carbs, and that is on the higher side. Most people will do between 30. And that is why if you look at all gels, like if you look at the good gels, I have my Roctane here. If you look at the Roctane has, this is the Roctane. If you look at it, it's 100 calories, and it's I think 32 grams. Yeah, it's 32 grams, with 21 grams being carbs. You see, this one is in that range of between 30 and 60 grams. That is why gels are packaged in 30. You'll find most gels are packaged in 30 grams, because your body cannot handle more than that when you're doing a marathon race. The other mistake we make, and this one I've seen a lot, is not practicing race defueling in the right intensity. As much as you're practicing using the gel on an easy run, you need to practice taking that gel on a run that is almost to the marathon pace. Also on a run that is like more than 2-3 hours, the time you will use during your marathon. So as much as you're practicing race defueling in training, you also need to practice race defueling in the right intensity. So have 2 or 3 runs where you're training how to use the gels and you're running fast. Because you can imagine, even on a race when you're running fast, how do you take your water when you're running fast? Yeah. So you need to practice that, taking the gel and taking the water when you're running fast. The third mistake which we make as runners is waiting too late to fuel. Yeah. That gel will not help you when you take it at 30 kilometers. Already, your body's your digestive system is compromised. And when you take that gel won't be used immediately when you take it. It has to go through the digestive process. So start taking your gels as early as possible in your race. What you're taking now, you will use it maybe in the next 30 minutes or 40 minutes. So start taking gels as early as possible. The other mistake is trying something new on race day. Yeah. I'll give an example of Kilimanjaro. Kilimanjaro, they provide sodas on the race. Coke, yeah, you'll find Coke on the race. And if you've not, first, Coke is more of a carbonated drink than a sports drink. Coke has more carbohydrate concentration than a sports drink. The recommended carbohydrate concentration in a sports drink is 6 to 8% carbohydrates. You'll find soda has more carb concentration. If you take that, most of the time you'll find 50 or 60% of people who take that soda, they will get stomach issues. Maybe what you can do is to dilute the soda, but will you really get time to dilute that soda? So if you've not practiced something in your training, be careful not to try it on race day. The fifth mistake is, this is very, very common, is most of us do not have a post-run or a post-race recovery plan, which is very important. Like if you're doing a workout today and you have another workout tomorrow, you need to manage your recovery immediately. Yeah. So if you have a hard workout today and you have another workout tomorrow, it's very key to manage your recovery in between the workouts. Or even during a race, that, as David was saying, the first 30 minutes are very crucial for recovery. The first 30 to 2 hours, always take your recovery drink between that time. We call it the glycogen window. At that point is when your body will take in the carbs and the proteins you're taking in quite fast. I know this is controversial, but I always tell people, if you have to take alcohol, yeah, after you run, take it maybe 2 hours after. The first 2 hours after you run, after your race, take a protein and a carbohydrate drink to allow your body to recover. And then now, after that, 2 hours later, now you can start taking your beer. Those are the 5 main mistakes runners make when it comes to fueling. One more thing I would want to add that David had mentioned is the issue of carb loading. This is also a very controversial subject, but look at it this way. You have been doing, I'll give an example of myself. Right now I'm in training and I'm now in my 2nd week of tapering. Last week I did 100 or I did 120 kilometers. Now I'm in tapering, I'm doing 70 kilometers. I've cut down my mileage. So my calories requirement has gone down because I'm doing less mileage. So the issue of adding more carbs into my adding more carbs into my diet does not really make sense, because already my training load has gone down. So what I advise is continue eating as normal. Yeah, you don't need to, because already your training load has gone down. If last week I did 100 kilometers and this week I've started tapering, I've done 65 kilometers. I do not need to add more food into my plate. I'll just need to continue eating as normal. Next week, the same thing. I reduce my mileage. Yeah, so it means my calorie requirement will have gone down, but I'm still eating normally. So there's no really need of adding more food because you're tapering. Already, your training load has gone down. So continue eating as normal. And as the closer you get to the race, take simple carbs. Simple carbs are easy to digest and they will get into your system quite fast. Avoid foods high in fat and food high in fiber because of gut issues. And I always advise take those meals small meals. Yeah, to avoid the hunger that comes in, especially when you're tapering. So yeah, so that's what I like to add, and I think now I can take in questions.
Okay, Dedan, maybe before we take the questions, let me read the ones that are there. We tackle them as then we open up the floor. Yes. So, okay, there was an offer to help me mute. Thank you very much. I think now we are under control. I couldn't figure out where things were. CW is asking where to buy gels. Douglas has answered her. There are some in Healthy You in various shops. I think you can, Healthy You is a good start. GU is there, so you can find those. There's and guys can share emails. There's a guy who's very happy that you gave them the right to take beer. So Alex. Is Kenyan tea good for recovery? Catherine, it's not listed for recovery, but it's probably part of the things you could take for your hydration general, but not hydration for race. Because at the end of the day, we're talking about general hydration, nutrition, and then race-specific nutrition hydration. So keep taking your ketepas and the likes. Alex said, can you wait 2 hours? We'll let him ask that question when you open, because I'm not too sure. Wait 2 hours for what? If it's to eat or I mean to eat, we will let him ask that question. The tapering is a question, 1 or 2 weeks to race. I think we'll tackle that. And the next webinar will be on tapering. That is on 4th of, and that's actually next Tuesday. They are together, they are close together. Really, by the same token, this discussion could be a bit overwhelming for some runners. I guess the question is to start and get the balance right. Okay, there's someone who says, Chris says, many thanks, David and Dedan. Very valuable insights of fueling and having a plan. By the same token, this discussion could be a bit overwhelming for some runners. I guess the question is around how to start and get the balance right. Which one can only discover by incorporating this in the training regimen to see how their bodies respond. I agree. I guess the information, I mean, you just digest it in the bits that you're able to digest. If there are additional questions, then I think Miricho and myself are available even for maybe specifics. Examples of simple carbs, I think Dedan you have mentioned. Simple carbs, I think Dedan, you want to mention those ones again? Someone is asking examples of simple carbs.
When we talk of simple carbs, number one is rice, right? Rice, ugali, bread, those are simple carbs. Like for me, the night before the race, I always take rice. Yeah, because rice is very easy to digest. By the time by morning, it's well digested, and you can go to you can clear it from your system. So rice is one of the simple carbs. Ugali, bread, yes, those are simple carbs.
Okay. There's some Julius says 2 hours is like fasting for a year. That's an interesting one. Thanks, David and Dedan, for this insightful information. I'm from Canada and looking forward how to improve the endurance. For me, after 5 to 6 kilometers, it is very difficult to continue. I think maybe Shailesh, probably the issue there is probably how fast you run. And maybe this is something that we need specific discussions. And I think what I'll do, I'll put my email there and Miricho, I mean, our handles there. Maybe Miricho, you can put yours and I'll put mine for further something that is a bit of a deeper discussion away from this, that we can take it away from this conversation so that we don't divert too much. Someone is asking about injuries, but before we get to injuries, and we have a webinar on injuries coming up as well, let me let guys ask questions now. Maybe you can just raise your hand and we let you unmute, and then you can ask the specific question. I think we'll start with Alex, the 2-hour question. Alex, are you there? Go ahead, Alex. Okay, the rest of us, if anyone has a question, you can raise your hand so that we have some order.
Hi, this is Alex. I have a question actually. My question is how many gels do you guys take for full marathon? Most especially, that's question number one. Question number two is that do you ever use 2 types of gels? Say, for example, SIS or any other gels in the race?
Okay, Miricho, shall I go with that one?
Okay. Now, for me, when I'm doing a marathon, I usually take like for the marathon I'm training for. Let me talk about the marathon I'm training for, because that's what I've practiced in training. I'll use 4 or 5 gels, and I'm alternating a gel with caffeine and a gel without caffeine. So this is how my fueling plan will be. 2 or 3 hours before the race, just to replenish my my glycogen stores, I will take oats. Yeah, and if it's 1 hour before the race, it will be 1 gram times my weight. So I will take 63 grams of oats. What I do with oats, because oats tends to expand, I soak the oats the night before. So on the morning on the race, it's not too much. I even have my scale here. I always, when I'm training guys, I always tell them I have my scale. So in training, I will wake up, like in training, I was waking up at 3 a.m. because the run will start at around 5. So at 3 a.m., I will have my oats. So that's the same plan. That's the same thing I need to do during race day. So I will take my oats 1 hour, 1 hour, 30 minutes before the run. And then 10 minutes before the race, I will take my goo liquid. Yeah, there's goo liquid and there's the goo gel. Yeah, so this is the first one I will take. With the goo gel, I'll take the whole of this 10 minutes before the race. Yeah, and then every 35 minutes into the race, I will take a half of my Roctane gel. So when I do that calculation for a run that around 3 hours, that's like 4 or 5 gels. So that's how my fueling plan for the race is. So it depends. For me, I know if I take a full gel, this one, when I'm running, it will give me stomach issues. So what I do, I take a half of this every 25 to 30 minutes. Yeah, so within an hour, I will take this one gel. Yes, that's how my fueling plan will look like. And it's something I've practiced. I've done this for 3-4 runs. It's not something that I'm going to do it on the race day. It's something I've practiced. When I started, I would only take a third. Actually, when I started, I would only take a third of this. So within every 30 minutes, I would take a third. But with time, my body has adapted to it. So now I'm taking a half of this every 30 minutes. So practice during your training. And as you practice, you'll find that your body will adapt and you'll get to know what works for you. Yeah. Never try anything new on race day. And if I get, like I know where I'm going to run, they call it the Gatorade. They will have the Gatorade gel. I will not touch that. I will carry my gels and use them during the race day.
Okay, maybe I can add on to that here. Like Dedan is saying, a number of factors. One, what you train for, also the duration of your run. Very, very important. Because remember, how do you determine how many to take? If you're taking half every 35 minutes or every 40, I personally take a full one every 45 minutes. Then within 3 hours, I just carry 4. I can actually carry 4 in my pocket, 1 for start. And then within those 3 hours, hopefully I'll be done. So the duration of the run and your training. So you see some people are saying from training, you're not able to take a full one. So in which case you carry half. There's also a question of how do you carry all these? My friend, you have to learn how to carry your burdens. So there are many ways. I mean, there are shorts with pockets. There are belts that you can use. And you just look around you when you're carrying. By the way, when you see people running with things, it is because of, sometimes when you have not been training with gels, you don't know why guys carry a bag or guys have pockets furrowed on the sides or on the back. This is how you carry. So I think that answers a question that I've seen before we let the other person ask a question. So that was John who had asked that question. Brands of chocolate milk. I don't have any specific ones that I can mention, but I think if you can get the normal protein shakes, then you are home and dry. That is important. I think there's also a clarification. I think we into that things of complex and simple sugars, etc. There's a bit of, I think we flipped the things around. The complex carbohydrates are the ones that you should take regularly for your meals, or if you are loading 3 hours before. That is the pasta, the rice, the oats, the potatoes, the bread, the cereals. But towards the race, you can't take those. If you are 1 hour to the race, you want to take simple carbs. And one of the things that has those simple carbs, they are easily digestible. That is it may be a fruit, some honey for some people. I think there's a bit of a flip on that. So the complex ones are the ones that actually don't raise your blood sugar very fast. So brand of chocolate milk, that one I don't have one to mention, but they are there. But in Healthy You, you've got a lot of shakes. And also, as you take this thing, it's also good to check where they are from, because you don't want to just take something that is new that you've never heard of. I know, like when you go to countries like US and Europe, they are very stringent about any products introduced in the market. So you just have to be careful what you take. And there are some that people use around you. Just ask runners around you, you'll get that information. We can let the next questions. The next question, someone can, the next hands up. I see one hand up. I'm not too sure who this is. Yeah, you can just unmute and then ask.
Hello. I wanted to ask that earlier you mentioned that overhydrating is not good. So I wanted to ask if it's overhydrating before the run or while at the run.
It is both, Josh, and nice to have you listening in. It is both. And I know someone else has also asked, when you say you want to start with your tank full, does that mean a full stomach? So we are not asking you to go with a full stomach to the start line. Over time, you're able to tell how much can I take and be able to run well. So again, even with fluid, you need just enough fluid to be able to, you see what you will do for hydration, you just make sure that the day before your urine is restored to be clear. And maybe in the morning, just take a bit based on what you have practiced. So we are not saying, like the way you go to a hospital and are told before you take an ultrasound, you have to fill 6 glasses. No. You will not be able to run. So it's just a little, so that you're not behind hydration. It doesn't mean that your stomach has to be full of water, but this you practice in the runs.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, okay.
And David, maybe to add on that,
yeah, okay. Yeah.
David, maybe to add on that,
yes.
Hyponatremia, which is basically low sodium levels in the blood, happens a lot, especially with the slower runners. Because for the slower runners who are on the course for longer, they will tend to take a lot of water, during the race, and they are not replenishing enough sodium. So the more water they take during the course, they end up having that imbalance with sodium. So people who take longer on the course, who tend to take more water on the course, are advised to have to take water with sodium to replenish the sodium that is lost by sweat, and also not to take too much, not to overhydrate, basically. And things like I see people carrying salt, which is very, very good. Yeah, and also if you're buying the gels, go for the gels that have high sodium content. You can also get sodium tablets you can get sodium tablets from Healthy You, from Run Beyond, if you're taking longer on the course to be able to replenish the lost sodium. But then also, this is something you have to practice in training. Yeah, so practice it in training. See, because you might take the sodium tablets or the gels with sodium and it brings issues into your stomach. So always practice this in training. Yeah, all these things work differently for everyone, and the key thing is just to practice in training.
Also,
yes.
the different gels, they are just for info. I personally use this Roctane because of my sweating.
Yes.
It is called cold brew. I think it's not very clear, but it has one of the highest amounts of sodium. It actually has 125 mg sodium. I think Miricha, yours will probably have what, 60, 75?
Yes, the Roctane has, this is Roctane, it has 125.
Roctane,
yes.
Yeah. And then this one also has 70 mg of caffeine. Again, we are seeing a lot of introduction of caffeine into products. We saw Mortein having a gel that is not caffeinated, then they brought out caffeinated. They had a drink mix that wasn't caffeinated, then they introduced caffeinated. They say caffeine, when you take a certain amount of caffeine and carbohydrates, it is easily digestible, and it helps to reduce the perceived sense of exertion. And also, what happens with caffeine? Caffeine goes to your brain. You see, there's a time in the race that even though you may take a bit of energy, your brain may be looking at 1 kilometer like 2 or 3, you know, and so that shot of caffeine, of course, not too much, and that's why almost every gel, every isotonic drink has a bit of caffeine. Just takes a bit of that to the brain to just sort of give it that alertness. So and that alertness really helps in keeping you alert. Again, it can also be detrimental because too much of it can also cause a bit more dehydration. But in the right quantities, like this they start off with gels with zero, so it's zero caffeine. You have, I think, 25 mg. I think the GU has a very high content of 70 mg. There is a SIS gel that I also use that has about 150 mg caffeine. I take it at the 2 hour 15 minutes if I feel that I need it. If I feel like I'm fading away, and they are all legal. It's not doping. Yeah. Any other question? Or before I read the next one set of questions, we want to wrap up the next 15 minutes.
I have one.
Yes.
I see there are 3 minutes to go. Is it 2 minutes to go? Let me ask one.
Yes.
Maybe.
But we'll add a few minutes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
It may have happened to people during the marathon or not, but it's something that happened to me over comrades. So you get to this, say like 3/4 of the race, like for comrades now, that was around 70 kilometers, where I feel like my gels are no longer working. I just feel like like swallowing everything that comes on the support. You take water after 2 kilometers, you take that soda, and soda actually feels extremely good at those times. So is there a time that it gets and all this nutrition thing doesn't work, or does it mean that you probably didn't start off very well?
Dedan, do you want to take that?
Okay, when it comes to ultras, I always recommend alternating gels with solids. Yeah, because when you take gel continuously, you will get to a point where you don't want to take any more. So, like if you're doing an ultra, alternate between a gel and a solid. You can have, the good thing about ultras is your body can take a bit more. Yeah, it's not like a marathon where it's too fast. In an ultra, you can take even up to 90 grams. Yeah, so have your gel the first 1 hour, the second hour, take a chapati. Yeah, not a full chapati. Of course, the fundamentals are still there. You need to take at least 90 grams. Yeah, so take maybe a quarter chapati, and then the next 1 hour, you can take a banana. And also, when you're taking a banana, you have to be very careful. A full banana is usually around 90 to 100 grams if it's a bigger banana. You see, when it passes that 100 grams, then it becomes very, very, very hard for your body to digest. So when you're taking things like a banana, take a third or a half. Yeah. And then, yeah, alternate between gels and solids when you're doing an ultra. It might be tricky to do that during a marathon, but during an ultra, it's advisable. Alternate between gels and solids. And when you look at most of the gels, they actually tell you the maximum you can take in a day, I think it's 6. Yeah, I've seen that in one of the gels. So yeah, so you're not advised to take more than 6. So if you're doing your ultra, alternate between the gels and solids.
I totally agree. These gels, you can only take so much, so that's why you need to train with something else. So whatever works for you. For me, I take a brown bread and peanuts wrapped or a sweet potato piece, and very small. You actually don't need a lot. Then the other question here is, how do you avoid peeing? Again, it's a constituent of training and knowing how much fluid to take. Of course, when you pee, it means that you have taken a little bit more, because generally there should be a certain balance between how much you take and the sweat. By the time, technically, if you do it well, and it comes with time and with being very intentional. If, for example, you pee in a run of 40K or 30K, then you do what you would do is reduce the water a little and see what happens. Then with time, you might get it right. I remember a guy who was peeing every 5 kilometers, and we had to tell him, look, and he was trying a sub 3. We told him, sub 3, you don't have time even for one pee. And over time, he stopped, and he eventually managed to run a whole race without peeing. Someone had asked about table salt. I think that's everything. Yeah, go ahead, Dedan.
And maybe to add on that part of peeing,
yeah.
Actually, that has been when I started trying out the gel, that has been my greatest worry.
Yeah.
Yes, and now with time, you learn that like for me, I've learned to hydrate the previous day. So that on the morning of the race, before the race, I take a very small amount of fluid. I will take small amount of fluid, because I realized if I start taking water quite early, like if I wake up at 3 a.m. and I bring my run at 5, if I start taking a lot of water from 3 a.m. or 3:30, 4 a.m., by the time I'm starting the run, 30 minutes into the run, I'm already peeing. So that's something that I've really been struggling with, and with time I've tried to find out the best way to balance that and avoid that. So yeah, so some of these things you have to try them in training and get to know what will work. Because the way you're saying, if you're chasing a sub 3, there's no way you can afford to waste even 30 seconds of your race.
Yeah. Yes. Agreed. Yeah. And I think the key thing here is that we must be very intentional about what we do. We must take notes. What I showed on my notes about my hydration plan is actually off a Garmin. So there's a Garmin, under Garmin, there's a place you do notes. Maybe I can share that again quickly. So you have to really be able to, you have actually to be able to take notes, see what happened this run, because you don't want to try and remember, because then you won't. So after every run, I always take notes. So Gu has a provision. Gu has a provision. I mean, Garmin has a provision. This notes no one will see except you. So after every run, I'll look. So the next run I do, the next long run I'll look at this, and then I will say what worked, what didn't work, and then you keep tweaking until you get it right. So it's just a question of being intentional. So there's someone who had said, go over the plan for loss of excessive salts. I need to mute all again. Go over again the plan for those that lose excessive salts. I think what we had said, you may need the energy gels with a bit more salt in them, more sodium. You need isotonic, definitely, so you cannot hydrate with water alone. And depending on the extent, if long enough, you may have to carry some salt, or your extent or the distance of the run, you may have to carry some salt tablets. Dedan mentioned they are there at Run Beyond and the Health You. So these things are close by with us. So someone says registration for Standard Chartered Marathon is ongoing. It's a good way to for those guys not doing Chicago or Boston, a good race to try the fueling. Basically, you should try the fueling before and then implement it in the run. And good news for those who are coming on Saturday for the run, Standard Chartered Marathon will be registering people there. So you have no excuse to say you did not get a chance to go and register, etc. So they will be there on ground at current 2:15. Any experience with fueling with Lucozade throughout the race for a full marathon with a mix of some water sips? Again, I think Dedan, you mentioned this, you can go through this. I mean, I think they are fizzy drinks a bit. Maybe you can just say what you did, add what you had said.
Okay. Number one, there's a difference between an energy drink and a sports drink. I'll give an example of, I'm sure most of you have tried the USN sachet, or the USN have an energy drink. If you look, always read the ingredients. The thing with energy drinks is energy drinks have more than 80% carbohydrates concentration. And when the food you're taking has more than 8% carbohydrate concentration, there's a very high chance your gut will not be able to digest that. Yeah, because your gut, when you're running fast, can only digest up to a certain amount of carbohydrates. So I know there's Lucozade Energy, and I know there's Lucozade Sport. Yeah, so I believe Lucozade Sport is what is meant for fueling. It's a sports drink. So when you're choosing what you're taking, you have to be very careful not to take an energy drink. You take a sports drink. Yeah, if you look at the USN electrolyte that is sold, when you go to Run Build, you'll find it. You will see. You read the ingredients. I think it has 18 grams of carbohydrates. You'll find that it's within the recommended range. So be careful when you're buying your gel or your energy drink. Make sure it lies on the sports side. It's not an energy drink. The same thing with things like Ribena, soda. Those ones are more energy drinks. They have too much carbohydrates. And when you're running, for an ultra, it can work. But for a marathon or a half marathon, your body can only take up to 6 to 8% carbohydrate concentration in a drink. Yes, so be careful. I think you need to be careful what you're taking. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
And what I've experienced with many runners who take soda in a run, they'll always come and tell you, hey, I took this soda, and that's where my run, I started having issues with my stomach. And yeah, with further research, you realize soda has more carbohydrates concentration. So if you're taking that, if there's no other drink and you're taking that soda, the best thing to do is to dilute it. But now the question is, if you're chasing a marathon PB, will you get the time to dilute the soda? Yeah. So yeah, so plan ahead, have your gels, have your sports drink that is right, and use it in the race.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes. There's also someone who Tibet says, so ultra mtu anabeba chapati. Yes, Tibet people carry stuff. There are those two small little bags can carry a lot. The waste bags can carry a lot. Then Josh had asked if Lucozade Sports is for children. Josh, I need to check that. I'm not too sure about that. The age limit, so I'll check that. Then there's someone now that, sorry, Dedan, did you have something on that? On the
yeah. What I wanted to say is when you're buying these drinks, always read. The first thing I always do when I get a gel is to always read. Yeah, there are those instructions and the ingredients. Always read. They are very, very important. So when you're buying that Lucozade Sport, check, see whether it's allowed for children. Yeah, don't just take it. Go through the ingredients and read. Like you can see this gel. If you see here, this one has caffeine. This one doesn't have caffeine, sorry. But this one has caffeine. Yeah. So always make sure you check and read before you buy your gel.
Okay. How about when you can't stomach anything before a run? I'm not too sure if it's to experiment a bit more, and maybe that's a discussion you can have with someone. Some people are able not, some people are totally not able to take, but the question is, are you also able to take in the run? I think what happens eventually, somehow down the line, your performance will be compromised because you will, I mean, if there's no way you're going to run 5 hours without taking something. I think you just must try. Maybe the issue is what you're trying, how often, and the quantity. Maybe that is something that you have to now be very deliberate about. over a long period, you might figure out there's something you could use. Yeah. Then there's someone who had asked about tapering, and for all of us here, remember we have a tapering one next week on Thursday, and we could couple it up with maybe the questions on injuries, etc. We'll see what to add on to the tapering. We have mentioned a bit of it today. Miricho, some comments on tapering. They're asking 1 or 2 weeks.
Okay. I think first we need to understand what is tapering. Tapering is the last part of training where you cut back on your training load. I think there are a few guidelines that you use to taper. Number one is, of course, when you're starting to taper, you have gained all the physiological training adaptations that are required for your race. So by the time your 3 weeks of tapering are starting, you're already at the peak. Yeah, you've gained all the required training adaptations. Now tapering is purely now to maintain what you've gained, and at the same time recover and make sure you've by the time you're getting to race day, you're well recovered, and all the fatigue that came up with the training is gone, but your adaptations are still there. For a marathon, I think between 21 days, yeah, your last longest run should be 21 days before your race. So 21 days before your race, that's when you get to do your longest run. And then now you start your tapering now for 3 weeks. But then now when you're tapering, you have to make sure some of the principles we follow is you maintain intensity. By this, I mean, the first runs you are doing, the intervals, you still do them, you maintain the intensity. But then now, just to avoid the training, you maintain the intensity, maintain the frequency, like the first 1 week and the first 1 week of tapering, you maintain the frequency. If you're doing your 5 runs in a week, do the 5 runs, maintain the intensity, but now what you reduce is the volume. So if on a Monday you are doing a tempo run that is 1 hour, sorry, 1 hour is too much, like 40 minutes a tempo run, do 30, yeah? If on a Wednesday you're doing intervals, you're doing 800, start doing 400. So you reduce, the first week of tapering, you reduce the volume, you maintain the intensity, and you maintain the frequency. The second week of tapering, you maintain the intensity, reduce volume, and now it starts reducing frequency. And then now on the last week of tapering, you do what we call, you reduce frequency, you reduce volume, but you still maintain the intensity. So 3 weeks for a marathon. For a half marathon, I believe 2 weeks is enough to do your tapering.
Yeah, that's well said, Dedan. There's a question here. Is Energade okay? That I don't know the particular drink. I would have to see. I mean, it could be okay, but we may not know every drink, so that we would have to check. Maybe you can give us the specs. Please say something about ORS and if it's a good alternative to gels. You know, ORS is it's biased to a lot of electrolytes, and so it contains, I would say, more electrolytes than a sports drink, but maybe a little bit deficient in the carbs. So that is the difference. So because as the name suggests, it's oral rehydrating salts. So most of the constituent is for salts. So I personally, because of sweating, do take some ORS the days before the race, after the fast runs, you know, where I sweat in maybe the intervals, etc. But then I don't use it for the race. The ultra, I actually used it and I didn't cramp, which was a good thing because my sweating can lead to cramping, and I put it at certain intervals. But again, the ultra we are saying is slower, etc. But it was just as part of the hydration. So where I would put the water, then I would put ORS, you know, but then I don't still compromise on my isotonic, because the key thing is that I must get the carbohydrates. You know, if a rice is very, very, very hot, I think for me, like kili can get very hot. Then at particular points, I put ORS, and purely because I sweat a lot. For someone else, it may not be required. But to answer the question, yes, you can use ORS. It may not take the part of sports drink because it may be deficient of the calorie requirement. But maybe if you are not able to take any other drink, you could then supplement it with maybe some gels, a bit space. You just need to try. Yeah.
Maybe to add on that, ORS is not a replacement to gels. ORS is an electrolyte. Yeah. So use your ORS to replenish your electrolytes, but still add gels for energy. Yes.
Okay. Please advise, caffeine affects performance. Yes, caffeine is known to boost performance, but of course there is also limits to it that become detrimental. So there is a bit of it in some of the gels, as you have seen. Please advise for a sub 5-hour marathon, how many carbs is required, and a heavy sweater, how much electrolyte? I think this is a very wide question in my view, and I think one would have to probably get into a bit of deeper discussions to be able to guide you through, because like we said, it's not a one size fit all. So maybe AKH, I don't know who AKH is, you can reach out maybe offline and then we can give you guidance. Can I take a 42 and I have never done it? Is a man 1 month enough to practice? If yes, how many kilometers per day or week? Dedan, maybe comment.
That is a no.
Yeah.
I always tell people, if you want to do a full marathon,
yeah.
If you want me to train you for a full marathon, I think the minimum requirement is you should be doing at least 200 kilometers a month. Yeah, for the last few months. Yeah, showing up 1 month to race day and trying to do a 42 kilometers, you'll just have a bad experience with the race. So yeah, so if you want to do a 42 kilometers, I think the minimum requirement is the ability to do at least 200 kilometers for a few months. Yes. Actually, the first thing when someone tells me I want to train for a full marathon, the first thing I always do is ask them to share their Strava. And then I'll go on the profile and see how many kilometers have you been doing every month. So if you've not been, like if someone comes to you and they've only done 200 kilometers this year and they want to do a full marathon, that means they've been doing how many kilometers in a month? Less than
18, 17.
16. Yes. Yeah. So yeah. So start small, start with 10, 21, build on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
These races will always be there. So there's no need of biting more than what you can chew.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
You get injured, you hate running, you have a bad experience. It shouldn't be like that. It's something we also enjoy. As much as we touch our bodies, we also enjoy. I think we'll take the last question because we want to free up, guys. From Udomi, please comment on body weight and pace. Looking for a sub 3 with 92 kilograms. I already have a 324. Wow, that is good. 2021. Udomi, okay, my comment is, of course, weight is a factor in pace. So basically, I guess there is just a lot more work to be done with 92 kilograms. I mean, look for sub 3. I'm not saying it's impossible. We've already done very well with those kilograms. I don't know how many kilos you are right now, but I guess it's just the work is quite a lot. And I guess you have a better advantage as you understand if you are lighter. Yeah. And of course the load, the impact on the body parts, etc., is also quite significant. And I'm not saying it's impossible, but it will take a lot of work. Yeah. Yeah. Any comments, Dan?
Okay, questions around weight are very tricky to answer, because now one thing I always tell runners is you can't define a runner's body. Yeah, as long as you run, you are a runner. So I think it depends. There's no yes or no answer. Yeah, if you want to get a sub 3, if you want to get not even a sub 3, if you want to get a good time in a marathon, yeah, you have to train, you have to be consistent. Yeah, you have to work hard. Yeah, there are no two ways about it. You really have to work hard. Yes, and as long as you're dedicated, everything is possible.
Yeah, correct.
Yes, you have to put in the work.
Yeah.
Yes.
Agreed. Good people, I know we cannot have an end to this. I see a lot of thank yous. I see a few other questions coming up. Allow us to take them for the future. Dial in same time next Tuesday. We'll be talking about taper and others. I'll be with Dedan as well. We'll also be running on Saturday. I mean, on the sidelines, we can also discuss some of these things and also share our experiences importantly, because I think there are so many lessons amongst us. We don't need, I mean, before we can even go to books and look for elites to tell us, there is so much, we are so rich with the experiences that we can all benefit from. So send out word out there. I'll be posting about the next one next Tuesday, 6 o'clock. We have a run on Saturday. It's normally a very good time to also share on a one-on-one as we do swallowship, as we cheer on the guys who are going to be running in the next few days and weeks, and as we welcome the guys who've been away. So allow me to end this session. Thank you so much, Dedan. You can say kwaheri to guys.
Mine is to say thank you very much for joining us for this discussion. And as David is saying, we always learn from each other's experiences. Like for me, one thing I always say is the one thing I've learned from you, David, is how there's one thing you always say: control the controllables. Yeah, yeah. You can control the controllables. You can control practicing your race defueling in training. You can control waking up in the morning to go for a run. There are so many things you can control. Always control the controllables. You might not control the weather on race day, yeah, but there are many other things. You can control your tapering, you can control your fueling, you can control your pacing. Yeah, always control what you can control. And these discussions will help us learn all these things. You don't have to go do a marathon and suffer when you can practice fueling in training and go have a good experience. So yeah, so I'm very happy to share my insights and to help each other out there. And see you on Saturday for the run.
Yeah, so our parting shot: control the controllables so that then you have room to deal with the many unforeseens that could arise on the day. Have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you.